Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Got a busy show for you today. We got to talk about Alexander Mattison leaving the Vikings. We got to talk about Kirk Cousins, the NFL Combine, and it's March 5th. That means it's time to franchise or it's time to move on. I think there's one Viking that we really have to talk about that people are kind of speculating that might get franchised, but is it worth it? We'll talk about that and much more coming up on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey, beautiful people. It's a beautiful Tuesday in Minnesota. I don't know where you're listening from, but we thank all the everydayers that continue to listen, download, like, share, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend that we're here. This is Locked On Sports Minnesota. I'm your host, Ron Johnson. I got Sam Ekstrom joining me, my co-host. We have no Hanging with Ron Johnson segment today, so we're going to dive deep. We're going to go deep into the woods and into the weeds, whichever way you say it. I said woods. Some people say weeds. I don't know how they do it, but we're going to go deep on NFL free agency and a lot of talk about what's going on with the Minnesota Vikings in the Combine. But I want everybody to know today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. I keep telling you guys, I've done it. It's simple. It's easy. I'm actually going to Colorado this weekend, so I'm thinking about using the Gametime app. I'm going to use it because the Jazz, our own friend, David Locke, voice of the Jazz, they're playing the Nuggets. So if I get a chance to see Jokic in person and live and in living color, I think I'm gonna check it out. Got to see how my daughter's volleyball schedule goes before I just make any plans. We've got a volleyball tournament out there in Colorado, so I'm looking forward to that. But if I do go and her game's in early enough, I'm not scalping tickets. I'm using the Gametime app. Again, that's $20. Just use the code Locked On when you download the Gametime app on any app market. Well, it's time for to jump into the show as I bring my co-host, producer, Sam Ekstrom into the show. Sam, it's March 5th. And on March 5th, there's a lot that goes on in the world. I mean, the 1st and the 5th, people's rent are due. People are getting paid today. There's a lot. But you know, in the NFL, it's time to franchise some players. It's time to put that tag on some players. Now, we can go way back to, you like that? When Kirk Cousins got franchised twice, not once, but twice by the Redskins, now the Commanders. And we know what that was like. It was consternation. It was a lot of like frustration. It was fine. I'll play under this tag. I've been with teammates that got franchise tagged and they learned the rules, which are once you franchise tag me, you are giving me the label that I can do anything I want to do. You trust me. I don't have to come to practice. I don't have to be at workouts. Not until the season actually starts. And so we had, I'm not going to say the name, but we had a guy on our team that did that where he kind of pushed the limits during OTAs. He showed up because he's like, look, you're not going to find me. You're not going to say I'm not here. He showed up, but he didn't do anything. He sat in his locker. He just lifted weights. He went out there and jogged around, but he's like, I'm not getting hurt before the season starts. I'm not getting hurt because why? Because you franchise me. So that means I don't have a long-term contract. I don't have any financial stability. Now, when I look back on it, he's a defensive back. And I think he was getting like every year, because he did it twice to him too. He was like $10 million was like, because you talk about DBs and because he was a cornerback. So cornerbacks get paid. And so I think that first year they tagged him, it was like 10 or 11 million. And we're all sitting back like, this dude's mad about getting 10. Then the next year, I think it hit like 17 or 18. And I'm like, you're mad about this? But now that I'm older and understand injury, you look at Kirk Cousins with the Achilles. You look at Russell Wilson trying to fight the Broncos for his injury guarantee if he's get injured. Because now the Broncos, I think, are on the books for like 88 million or something, or 85 million that they're going to owe him, 39 for this coming season, unless a team picks him up for the league minimum. Because he's like, look, I'll sign for the minimum because the Broncos got to pay me anyway. So whatever you pay me offsets them. So why would I hurt you when I can hurt them? And so that's why that's a very intriguing opportunity for a lot of teams to get a caliber quarterback of Russell Wilson at the league minimum and force the Broncos to pay the rest. And imagine if the Broncos, like if they get to beat the Broncos, that makes it even sweeter. Like you're paying for our quarterback to beat you. Like that is sweet chin music, as the WWE wrestler community would say. And so, Sam, when we look at this league year, I'm going to start with the combine first, because March 5th doesn't matter unless the combine happens. Why? Because when the combine happens, GMs get to see these players, they get to understand what they possibly could draft, and then they get to make the decision what they're going to do. I think the Bears, now one, Caleb Williams didn't work out. He is going to work out at his pro day, but he kind of said, you know what? Like, there's only a certain number of teams that can draft me anyway. And you know who one of those teams were, Sam, that he decided to talk to? The Minnesota Vikings. Caleb Williams had a conversation with the Minnesota Vikings. And so when you think about all the teams, the Bears, the Vikings, I forgot the other three, I think the Falcons, because he basically said, look, there's only like 5 teams that are going to get me. Like the rest of these teams don't need a quarterback. So why am I going to waste my time, quote unquote, like with the Giants? Until you guys tell me you're going to get rid of Daniel Jones and draft me, or you're trading up, you know, to the first pick and giving the Bears Daniel Jones so you can draft. Like, why am I doing this? But the Minnesota Vikings saying we're one of them. When you look at the combine and you think about quarterbacks, I threw a name out there weeks ago on the football party. Keaton Slovis out of BYU. Now, all of a sudden, because I saw Reggie Wilson tweet that, because the Keaton Slovis steam picked up a little bit.
He was fast. He ran really fast.
He was making big throws, though, as well. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. And I didn't even see what he ran, though. What did he run?
Like 4.58. Like he was definitely – quarterbacks didn't all run, but he was definitely the fastest quarterback that ran at the combine. And
you think about that. I think Tom Brady ran, what, like 5-second 40 or something?
Like really
when he came out?
Yeah.
So when you think about that, and Peyton probably ran 4.9. So when you think about a 5.48, which is, I mean, hell, he's my speed. When I was coming out, I was a 4.55 guy. So that's moving for a quarterback. When you think about, I mean, now that's not Michael Vick. That's not Jalen Hurts. But that's not Justin Fields. But it's not Lamar Jackson for sure. But it's still moving at 6'3", 220. That's the big difference. And so Keaton Slovis, you think about eluding the pocket. You're thinking about the extra play. The difference in him and Jaren Hall, because BYU, but height. He's 6'3". Jaren Hall's like 5'10". You think about speed. He's a little bit faster than Jaren Hall as well. So he has the size, the height, the speed, and the arm strength. When you watch him throw the deep ball, it was pretty. The reason I say that name is because the Vikings don't have to go first-round pick if they're not sold on J.J. McCarthy or whoever falls to 11. And that's unless they're going to trade up, because a lot of insiders said they're within striking distance to go up and get like a Drake May. I don't think Caleb Williams will be there because he probably goes first, but they could go up and get a Drake May or the kid from LSU, Jaden Daniels. Sam, first question I ask you for the day, question of the day.
Yeah.
If you're the Vikings at 11, Caleb Williams off the board. I don't know about the next two teams, what they're going to do. Drake May is still there. Do you try to move up to 4, 5, or 6 or something to go get a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, it feels like you almost have to right now based on all the J.J. McCarthy steam, because for a while, Ron, and you've been talking about McCarthy for months, it felt like early on you could get McCarthy easily at 11 and maybe even in the second round. Correct. Now the talk is that J.J. McCarthy is a top 5 or at worst top 10 quarterback. So that means if you want to get one of the top 4, and you're not going to get Williams, but then May, Daniels, or McCarthy, you are going to have to trade up. And then there's a drop off. Then it's Penix and Bo Nix as the next tier after that. And I think that people are down on Bo Nix right now. Penix is still a big mystery with his medicals. Medicals seem to have checked out. Seemed like he had a good combine, but he's not considered a top 5 quarterback. If you want one of the top 4 guys, you are going to have to trade up. I think that's almost a guarantee at this point with all the quarterback needy teams in that top 11. The Vikings will need to make a move if they want to get one of those dudes. So it's kind of it's almost a little concerning or scary going into it, because you could get outbid. You could miss out on one of these top quarterbacks that you covet if you don't pony up enough draft capital. So it's a very unsettling situation now for the Vikings. But I think you have to try at least to trade up.
And when you think about that, you think about draft caliber quarterbacks. And this is the scary thing about quarterbacks. And I think you use the perfect word of scary. So getting outbid is scary, but also bidding too high is scary. Because think about, and I'm not going to ever hate on the guy because we don't know what they're going to be, but think about some of the first round picks. Let's just go back to last year. You know, the Carolina Panthers had a chance to get CJ Stroud at Ohio State. Now, I think, because again, DK Metcalf tweeted this. I remember when AJ Brown fell in the draft, and DK Metcalf's tweet was, I think to the respect of, I think it was DK Metcalf. I can't remember who it was. Or maybe when DK Metcalf dropped, this person tweeted this, but he's like, man, that boy Treadwell got people scared to draft out of Ole Miss. I don't know if it was DK Metcalf tweeted that about Treadwell, about AJ Brown, or if it was AJ Brown about DK. Like, it was something about that. Or I don't know, because I don't know where they all fell, who came from, because they all came from Ole Miss. Or maybe it was somebody else that tweeted about those two guys, because I remember DK dropping, and maybe that's what it was. I know it was DK dropping. Yeah, it was DK dropping, and somebody tweeted, Treadwell got those boys scared, which talking about the NFL to draft receivers out of Ole Miss. Now, that tweet was deleted. You probably can Google it and see who tweeted it. But it was deleted. But that's true. People look at schools and they look at coaching staffs and they look at output in the NFL and they get a little gun shy. They do. Now, what's weird, though, is Alabama quarterbacks had not to that point of CJ Stroud or Bryce Young done much, because quote unquote Jalen Hurts technically wasn't a quarterback for them. Now, Tua Tagovailoa was, but Jalen Hurts left, went to Oklahoma. So you could put him in that Oklahoma group with Mayfield. But I don't, the CJ Stroud Ohio State, was it the Justin Fields? And it wasn't just Justin Fields. I mean, if you look at the long line of Ohio State quarterbacks, people always say that, like, Ohio State quarterbacks never done anything in the NFL. Michigan quarterbacks, however, like Drew Henson, hadn't done much. Tom Brady did. But I started doing some math on that, Sam. There's not a school that really is QBU. Like, there's not a school that's put out quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback where schools can, like GMs can be like, oh, we got to draft the kid from that school because that school put out. Like, it hasn't happened. Like Tebow in Florida. Like, Anthony Richardson's just a unicorn. Tebow didn't work out from Florida. Neither did what's his name? Danny Warfel, Danny Cannell. You know, like, you could say that about a lot of schools. Florida State, like Jameis Winston. Did that work out? So for people to like try to put a school with a thing. Now, the one thing I can say, LSU receivers, it's worked out. Ohio State DBs, Texas DBs, it's worked out. But like Clemson, up until Trevor Lawrence, that was that. Now Cal, maybe you can say Aaron Rodgers and some of the guys out of Cal, it's worked out. Stanford with Andrew Luck. Like, you can't really pinpoint what school's going to put out a guy that you want. Because you can go to BYU and say, what was it, Joe Montana? Didn't he go to BYU?
Joe Montana? I thought he went to Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Who went to BYU then? There was another, was that Elway? Or did he go somewhere?
Elway went to Stanford. Joe Montana
was Notre Dame. Now, did you say that?
Yep.
Steve Young was the name. Steve Young went to BYU. So I know there was like a BYU court, because I'm like, Steve Young at BYU. So you can't say, oh man, Jaron Hall, we don't want to get Keaton Slovis, because remember what happened to Jaron Hall? Remember what happened to Steve Young? Worked out for him. So I think this whole school thing and where guys come from and so on and so forth, like, because right now, even with the Gophers, you could say, man, safeties out of Minnesota, go get them, because they're going to work out. Antoine Winfield, Tyrone Carter. You can go back to all the DBs that have been in the league from Minnesota. They've had a lot. I mean, cornerbacks and DBs from Minnesota, as of like the last 10, 15 years, been pretty good for the NFL. So if you're looking at Tyler Nubin, let me go get Tyler Nubin, because Antoine Winfield should have been a Viking and could be a great asset because I heard one of the draft scouts say this. Who's going to replace Harrison Smith? It's time for the Vikings to look for a safety to replace Harrison Smith. That was one of the takeaways, because on Vikings.com, Sam, I don't know if you saw it yet. It's on Twitter. They were asking, Jordan Reed, Charles Davis, Jeremiah, Daniel Jeremiah. So they were asking all these guys, hey, what should the Vikings do at 11? Because I know that's coming. They usually ask us to eventually, what do we think? It's like me, Bursich, Ben Lieber, we do like a video, Paul Allen probably, of like, what do we think the Vikings should do at 11? And they asked those guys, and somebody said, replace Harrison Smith. Like, not saying he's done, but draft a safety to go next to Cam Bynum. Now, maybe that answer is already there, and it's Josh Metellus. And I think that's what a lot of the scouts are forgetting. Like Josh Metellus, if he had to, I think Cam Bynum would be just fine in the Harrison Smith role. And I think Josh Metellus would be just fine in the Cam Bynum role, which like is a strong safety. So I think that to me was a little bit put off because I'm like, you have two safeties already. Now, do you need to find a replacement for Harrison Smith because you want Josh Metellus to still be your Swiss Army knife, nickel, do all guy? Yeah, maybe. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out what's best for this team. And right now, Sam, in my opinion, at 11, it's quarterback. Not to play now, but to play when Kirk Cousins is done. Give Kirk Cousins a 2-year deal. But some other draft names, when you think about the NFL draft, Sam, one guy said edge rusher. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah. I can't remember who it was, but he said edge rusher for the Vikings. And he named a couple guys like Alabama has a DN. But my question is, though, Sam, when you think about edge rusher, and this is my question to you, too. Another question for you, because coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit. We got to talk Alexander Mattison. I did say that. So we're going to talk replacement, franchise tagging of people. Does Alexander Mattison have a chance to come back for cheaper? That was one thing I saw. I don't think so. But when you think about that, Sam, is edge rusher, like if Danielle Hunter, if they can't come to an agreement with Danielle Hunter, do you think they need to go edge rusher at 11?
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback is the big asterisk. I think that needs to be your priority. But let's say that quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't get in that mix in the trade up. Then I think you are probably compelled at 11 to take a top player at an available position. Because if there's 4 quarterbacks going right away, there's going to be some dudes available at number 11. You might get the number 1 player at a given position. Chop Robinson, for instance, out of Penn State. Big combine. Legit player. I don't know if Mohamed Kamara is a first-round grade. Might be more of a second-round guy. He had a big combine. I think edge rusher is vital because we saw what this team is, even with just Danielle Hunter and no Marcus Davenport for most of last year. It felt like they still needed some help. Now, if you don't have Danielle Hunter, you don't have Marcus Davenport, you need so much help that I think you are obligated to go get someone that can rush the passer. And they haven't invested in pass rusher in a long time early in the draft. You got to start getting some talent in that group because that is such a valuable piece of winning football teams. They dominate the trenches, and the Vikings haven't had that in a bit.
Yeah, and so when you look at the trenches, I mean, when you just think about draft caliber guys, the top 100 guys, the edge, Dallas Turner's a name out of Alabama, 6'4", 240 pounds. You watch him playing games. He looks like at 6'4", 240, he actually looks pretty long and skinny. I don't know if you noticed that when you see him, but he is athletic. They call him an edge, but they're saying he kind of stepped into that Will Anderson Jr. role that was voided when he went to the NFL. And so when you think about Dallas Turner, I like the name. Name sounds cool. Dallas Turner.
Yeah.
But he could be an outside linebacker in that 3-4 defense. He is a guy that gets after the quarterback. He's a guy that moves well in space. That's the difference in him. Now you could go D tackle because we talked about this Newton out of Illinois, the 6'2", 300-pounder, the kid that was suspended for the first part of the Gopher game, came in. First thing he did, because I think me and Luke Spinman, when we did the breakdown, and Rob, he came in that Illinois game and immediately made an impact on the Gophers game. So you could look at that. You got, there's no reason to go O tackle. Now here's one for me, Sam. Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson, because they did mention cornerback. We've talked about that. Does Clemson cornerbacks kind of now, like, because we talk about schools and like you think about the recent Clemson cornerbacks that have come to Minnesota. When you think about what's his name, Alexander before Mackenzie Alexander, great nickel, didn't really work out at corner the way you thought. And now what's the new guy that's gotten hurt a couple times and hasn't done much? Their second round pick. Andrew Booth Jr. So, this kid is 6'2", 190 pounds, has the size, has long frame, long arms, but does that scare you off? When you think about it, like, is it the system? There is a receiver out of Florida State, Keon Coleman. Only reason I know him because he went to Michigan State actually first, didn't do much there. And then all of a sudden just had some freak athlete plays, 6'4", 215 pounds. Because I know we're going to talk about this in the Daily 3. Do you bring KJ Osborn back, or do you try to get a guy like Keon Coleman in the second round? Because they have him as an 18th on their top 100, but that doesn't mean anything. 18th on the top 100 just means they think you're the 18th best prospect, but it doesn't mean you're going to go 18th overall. It means your first or second round pick. So if he's there in the second round and the Vikings are like, look, we got Justin Jefferson, we got what's his name, let's bring this guy in, because maybe we're thinking like we know we can't afford Justin and what's his name, the receiver out of USC. They just got, why am I drawing blanks on names? Addison in like a couple years. So like there's always like plans for this kind of stuff. Also, think about the teams that have drafted multiple receivers and we're like, why are they doing this? And all of a sudden they're killing it. And they're like, oh, I see why they did that. So Cooper DeJean, that's a DB's name that popped up when they talked about the Vikings. I personally do not like him at corner. I don't think he got tested enough in the Big Ten to consider him a first round pick, but that's just me. He is athletic. He is a punt returner, but just true corner, I just don't feel like the Big Ten did enough. Like he didn't face enough big time receivers to say that. Kool-Aid out of Alabama, the other cornerback, he's another first round pick. They got Bo Nix down late. They got JJ McCarthy as 25th right now, prospect wise. So maybe he's dropped out of some of that top 10 stuff. I know people are saying that, but a lot of times people say that to get people to freak out. Like when they did that to the Bears, who they go, Mitch Trubisky. You know, that whole Bears thing when they went in, they panicked and the 49ers made trades and then this team made trades. All right, we're going to take Mitchell Trubisky. And they're like, thanks, because we never wanted him anyway. And look how that worked out. So we do know GMs like to play games. I'm a movie guy. There's definitely some truth to that movie Draft Day where GMs play around with each other and try to get guys to, you know, who you going to take? You tell me. Like Tyler Newman's a top 50 prospect right now. So that means second, third round pick. That wouldn't be a bad idea for Minnesota either because they're talking about safety. What better way to help out your 3-safety system with a 4th safety who can eventually replace Harrison Smith? Smart, covers a lot of ground, can play the Cam Bynum role. Cam Bynum can move into the Harrison Smith role, and then you still have Josh Metellus. So that's an option too because we don't know what Harrison Smith's going to do, and that could be a second or third round pick if Tyler Newman's there. But we can joke around about Minnesota's track record of not looking at Gophers, but that could be one. But again, there's a lot of names we can name, Sam, cornerback, receiver, DB, mainly DB, quarterback for me. I know edge rusher popped up, but Kalen King, the DB out of Penn State, that's another one that's a top 75 pick. He's a second or third round kid out of Penn State, 6 feet, 190, prototypical cornerback size, very dynamic, made plays on the ball. When I've watched him in the Big Ten. He's pretty solid. Now, Michigan didn't throw the ball much. I don't know if anybody watched the Michigan Penn State game. They didn't throw the ball at all in the second half, if you remember that. It was just run. Right. So the DBs in that game, of course, national TV, everybody's watching, and the DBs didn't even get to do their thing for Penn State because they took the ball out of J.J. McCarthy's hands. That's why people were down on J.J. McCarthy. Why didn't Michigan let him win the game? Why didn't he get to throw the ball? Well, Blake Corum is good. Donovan Edwards is good. So there's a lot to that. But, Sam, at the end of the day, it is cut day or franchise day. In your mind, in my mind, my answer is no. I don't think there's anybody the Vikings are going to franchise. But real quick, before we get to the next segment and get to our sponsors, do you think there's anybody the Vikings are going to franchise today?
No, because the two guys that would have made sense, Danielle Hunter and Kirk Cousins, are not eligible for the tag.
Yep.
Like the only reason you do that is because if it's some kind of cost value to you, you don't want to give them a massive extension. So you do it for 1 year. Yeah. Like if Cousins was eligible for a $38 million tag for 1 year, yeah, you do that, but he's not eligible. So I don't think there's anybody else where it makes sense. Yep. So probably not today for the Vikes.
More so transition day. I think you're going to see some guys get cut, guys that they're going to go to and say, hey, Can we talk about your deal? Can we get you cut down? No. All right, man, we got to release you then. And so I think that's going to be some of that today, last minute. But I don't think it'll be anything big, anything that of value. But I could be wrong. But I don't think it's going to be anything jaw dropping. I think their sights are focused on Justin Jefferson, Neil Hunter, and getting those two controlled, and then getting Kirk Cousins next and figuring out if that's the way they want to go, or if they're just going to move on and go straight rookie and say, look, let's do a competitive rebuild. Let's get a rookie in here and let's put a bunch around him. Because that's what the 49ers did. They put a bunch around a rookie, and it worked out. And he has a good offense. So coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit more about Alexander Mattison. The Vikings got rid of him. It is tough to see players go, but it is the move the Vikings had to make. We'll talk about that, what that means for the team, and much more. And then we got the Daily 3 coming up, but we have a word from our sponsors first.
Brought to you today by Gametime. Ron Johnson might be using Gametime to go see the defending champion Nuggets. over in Colorado, and you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big sporting event. Game Time is fast. It's easy. It's the way to get tickets to the best sports, the best music, the best comedy, and the best theater, because they've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee. It takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Flash deals, zone deals, giving you the best value. One of my favorites, if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, the Game Time guarantee credits you 110% of the difference. And you can buy tickets with the convenient Game Time app in just 2 taps. 1, 2, that's all it takes. So take the guesswork out, download the Game Time app, create your account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, all one word, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Well, Sam, it's time to talk about Alexander Mattison. We talked about him on the roundtable. The Vikings did part ways with running back Alexander Mattison. I think when they thought they were going to have a 1,000-yard running back, because we talked about that. His production behind Dalvin Cook, 1,000-yard running back, catches out the backfield, dynamic, and do some things. But if I'm not wrong, Sam, he had 0 rushing touchdowns this season. And for your starting running back to have 0 rushing touchdowns, because I think he had like 2 receiving touchdowns, but 0 rushing touchdowns. And then you see a guy in Ty Chandler come in with less production, less opportunities, and get the fans way more excited. The Vikings are human. So it's not like they don't have their pulse to like a little bit of like, what are the fans saying? Not so much the fans, but what are other teams and scouts saying? What is your local media saying? And everybody was high up on Ty Chandler. Everybody was picking Ty Chandler to be, the guy to make a big play over Alexander Mattison. I don't know if it was maybe a little bit more. He was trying to push it. He was trying to force the issue. He wasn't, as I don't know. I just don't know. Like he would get the defense sometimes when they were already worn down by Dalvin Cook, and maybe that's why he looked great. But it just didn't work out. The scheme they wanted and what they wanted out of him is not it. Like I think Isaiah Pacheco, I think Jet McKinnon, they would work well in Kevin O'Connell's system. I think Dalvin Cook would, because he's similar to Ty Chandler. Like Ty Chandler is basically Dalvin Cook, but a little bit less, shiftiness to him. But they're similar running backs. Where Alexander Mattison is more of a ground and pound, full head of steam. Give me a fullback, and that's not what this scheme is. This scheme is I'm gonna spread guys out, and I need you to get me 3-4 yards so I can be in 3rd and 6. Get me 3 and 4 yards so I can be in 2nd and 6, and I can get to 2nd or 3rd and 2. Alexander Mattison was giving you 1 yard, 0 yards, 2 yards. Like, he did have that one big run up to that one game, like week 12. And then everybody's, see, I told you I could do it. Well, where was that the first 11 weeks? And I think that's what the Vikings were. Like, nothing against him. He had a great, career, great season back when Dalvin Cook was here. We talked about some of those Seahawks games where he had 100 yards rushing. But it was far and few between this year. It just wasn't what they thought. So they moved on from Alexander Mattison. Now, next step, Sam, when you look at Ty Chandler, first question is, do you think Ty Chandler can run the show? I personally don't think he can carry it by himself. I think he can do a good job as a starter. I'm not sure he can carry it by himself, though, Sam. Where do you think Ty Chandler sits? Do you think he's RB1? Or do you think he's a 1A, 1B? Or do you think he's just 2 and they're going to go out and get them a starter?
Yeah, I think he's 2. And I think that he's pretty clearly 2. Like, I think that Wongwu, I think that Dwayne McBride, Cam Akers, if they come back, I think they're all competing for that 3rd role. I think Chandler's your number 2 guy. You've got him for 2 more years on a rookie deal. That's an asset that you want to keep around. He's explosive, probably lacks a little bit in the pass blocking game, but I think he can get there. I think that's coachable. I think you just need someone who's a little more physical, who's maybe got a little more talent coming out that can be your trying to remember who the Lions get. Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep.
Somebody that can come in and make an immediate impact. And I don't know, I'm not suggesting you spend a 1st round pick because I think you have other areas that you need to address first. But if you get someone in the 3rd round, I wouldn't be upset because running back does matter. If you get a quality back at on a rookie deal, that's just great value because then you've got him cheap, you've got a good backfield, and I think that's what the Vikings need to consider. So there's a lot of free agents, Ron. Do you think they're going to go after someone like Ezekiel Elliott or Derrick Henry, or do you think they'll go the draft route?
I think they'll go the draft route just because when you look at the projected, so when you look at rounds of these top running backs, the top running backs in the draft right now, Blake Corum is a second-round pick. They have him slated as second or third round, but second-round pick. Running backs have never really, it's become a thing where they're like, look, we're not taking running backs in the first round anymore. Like, why? Like Bijan Robinson now, again, I think that's more of the Falcons' ineptitude, how to use him versus his skill level. Because the Falcons just had no idea what to do with him, and that's why they got fired. Because you look at some of the plays he made, and you're like, okay, wait, you have this guy in your refrigerator, and you're not using him. But you look at Blake Corum, 5'8", he's small, 213 pounds. He only ran a 4.55, so not blazing speed, and he's not huge. So I think just because he's rated the top running back, that's more so of the season than anything. Now you have Trey Benson out of Florida State. He's a prototypical NFL running back, 6'1", 223 pounds. Dude is and he's 4.5 speed. So dude is a big dude, and he can run. But again, second to third round projection. You got Jonathan Brooks out of Texas, 6 foot. He ran a 4.49, 207. Again, prototypical. But again, he's 2 to 3. Those are the top 3 running backs, and they're in rounds 2 to 3. You got the kid out of Notre Dame. You got Bucky Irvin, my guy. He's the 5th best prospect. I've told you that before. I've said that. Name, he's the second or third round. If the Vikings were to get Bucky in the third, if he's there, I like that. Now, he's only 5'10". He's 195 pounds, but he ran a 4.4. So he gives you that jitterbug, that speed. He's not little, but he's not tall. But 6 foot running backs, sometimes 6'2" running backs like Derrick Henry, they tend to run high sometimes in their career, like they take a beating. Bucky's low to the ground at 5'10", 200 pounds, so he's stocky. He's gained some weight, clearly, because he wasn't that big his freshman year with the Gophers. So he's put some weight on because they have him at 5'10", 200 or 195. But he ran a 4.4, and I think that's the key. He has a speed. Again, second and third round pick. He also, as a kid, he had 11 touchdowns. He had 1,100 yards rushing, but he can catch the ball. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. His freshman year, because they talk about the Minnesota year as well, too. But his Minnesota year, 4 touchdowns as a freshman, 700 yards. He had 1,000 yards rushing the year before. He had 1,100 year after that, but 11 touchdowns this past year. Just shows a kid can put the ball in the end zone. When you talk about his receiving ability, and this is where Bucky, I think, becomes attractive to Minnesota. Sam, the kid had 56 catches. 56 catches. Now, that Oregon offense throws the ball a ton, but 56 catches, Sam, as a running back, that's a lot. That's a lot of catches. 400 yards receiving, 56 catches in 14 games. Then you got Dylan Johnson out of Washington. We saw him in the national championship game. You have another running back out of Clemson, Will Shipley. I feel like he's been in school forever, though. Like, I feel like he's a little too old to be worried about that, but, he's there. And so they have a deep running back class where these guys are all 3 to 4. You got Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. We talked about him, 5'11", 210 pounds. And then the last one, my guy that I like. Now, I don't know if this is where Minnesota goes. I would not be mad at this. I actually really like this one, Sam. This is my number 1 option for the Minnesota Vikings. 6'1", 245 pounds. So bell cow, 4.5 speed, 3rd to 5th round projection right now. Young. He's just turning 21. Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. Now, I'm not a Badger fan, but I will become a Braylon Allen fan in this instance. I can put my axe aside, no pun intended, and I can accept Braylon Allen into the family because at 6'1", 245 pounds, that is a big man. That's Jerome Bettis-esque. But he ran a 4.5 with that speed, that weight, that size. We saw his dominant ability with the Gophers when he played them. Not this year, but years past. In the Big Ten period, though, you watch his games, he does not go down with arm tackles. He's a guy that they can hand the ball to on first and second down, Sam, and get some tough yards. And then they can bring in Ty Chandler as that thunder and lightning. Now, again, 3rd round. You can get him in the 4th round if he's there. And that could be potentially your starter in the 4th round because Braylon Allen, any other time, Braylon Allen probably is a 1st round pick at that size, 6'1", 245 pounds. The one knock on him, Sam, is injury. He got hurt this year, so people were probably concerned about his injury. He was a steady runner over the past 3 seasons. Freshman debut was ridiculous. I remember him, but it's been staying healthy. So those are my running backs I would take, but I do like Braylon Allen and Bucky Irving. Again, I'm Big Ten bias, I guess I'll say, but I would not be mad at Bucky Irving in the second or third round. Well, third round. I wouldn't go Bucky in the second, but third round, and then Braylon Allen in the third, fourth, or fifth if he's there. I would be okay with that as Alexander Mattison's replacement. And if not just replacement, he becomes the guy. Like, he becomes like an Adrian Peterson guy, because people are like, are we ever going to see a season like Adrian Peterson again? Braylon Allen might be able to give it to you. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on running back?
Yeah, I'm into it, Ron. It hasn't worked out quite the way we've hoped with some of these running backs, because like you hear about, there's a team or two every year. They draft a guy like Devon Achane for Miami, who is a star right away, and you found him in the middle of the draft. And you say, well, why can't we do that? Well, the Vikings tried, Chandler, they tried, and he wasn't really a star. He's a good player. Dwayne McBride, they tried, didn't make the team. Alexander Mattison, they got in the third round, good player, was not the type of star you were hoping to get, where you took him. So it hasn't quite worked out the way the Vikings wanted to with some of these running back draft picks. Maybe this is the time where they can really get that diamond in the rough that comes in right away and makes an impact.
Yeah. And the guy I want to interview, we'll see. He's a head coach now, so it might be tougher to get him before Deshaun Foster out of UCLA, because he has a guy by the name of Carson Steele who's entering the draft. He coached him, 6'1", another big guy, 6'1", 225 pounds, basically my weight, but 2 inches shorter. And he ran a 4.55, my speed. But at running back, 4.55 is different than a receiver. It's a little bit more powerful. It's a little bit more explosive. It comes to the lane a little quicker. And he's a third or fifth round as well. But I wonder what this kid is about. We'll have to talk to at some point, maybe Deshaun Foster finds time, because he's the head coach now. He's a busy guy now, but maybe he'll still give us some time. It's my guy. And get our first, because I don't think we had Kenny Burns on. I'm about to say it might be our first head coach. No, we had Kenny Burns on as well. So I think that's going to be the key, though. Can the Vikings find somebody in this draft? Because I think that's the way to go. I would not go free agent, because they're going to want more money than probably you want to deal with. And then if they're like you said, Ezekiel Elliott kind of is towards the end of his career. Do you want to waste money on Derrick Henry because he doesn't want to play for cheap? I'd say you can easily find a guy in the third or fifth round now with this running back class, because it is deep. It's a deep class. And right now, everybody's high up on quarterbacks, edge rushers, and cornerbacks. So the fact that those names are like, those positions are so high up, and then like offense, we know offensive tackles can be a couple sprinkled in there. Running backs just fall into the wayside. Like, the league is going away from the running back. So now you can get a key piece to your offense in the second, third, fourth, fifth round, because these three of these, like Bucky Irving, easily be a second round pick. Braylon Allen easily would have been a first round pick years ago, but the NFL's gone away from it, and it's different now. But we got the Daily 3 coming up, Sam. And the one thing I do want to hit on to make sure we talk about this, though, when you think about the free agency, because we wanted to get Robert Smith on, but we'll get him on and talk about running backs. But when you think about the free agency versus rookie, the big difference is age, and then, like you talked about, contract amount in the production time. So like the amount you have to pay them, I think rookie is the way to go, because you don't need a veteran when you have a veteran quarterback and you have a veteran receiver, you have a veteran offensive line. You can use a rookie running back that's really good. And Braylon Allen, to me, the 10th overall prospect in their minds, in my mind, he's top 5. So the way they're treating Braylon Allen right now due to injury, just not a prototypical like scat back. You got Ty Chandler who can catch the ball out the backfield. So let Braylon Allen be your bruiser in this offense and force people to put guys in the box. Now Justin Jefferson gets a cleaner pitcher. Now Kirk Cousins has a cleaner pitcher, because you're going to go back to that old school Adrian Peterson. And there's a lot of guys in the box. But we'll see. We'll see if the Vikings want to go that route, because there are 4 to 5 running backs that I could see easily falling to the Vikings in the second, third, or fourth round. But time to jump into the Daily 3, Sam. It's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. But we have a word from our sponsors.
Brought to you today by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. A great place to bet the NBA. Our Minnesota basketball party coming up on Wednesday, by the way. We'll talk a lot of Timberwolves and talk about their declining win total projection at FanDuel. At the All-Star break, it was 58.5. It's down to 55.5 after some of these recent devastating losses against really good teams at home. You can bet the Wolves over 55.5 if you have belief in them at FanDuel, and plenty of other props. Just looking at the NBA tab right now, you can bet conference winners, division winners to make the playoffs, to not make the playoffs. You can bet Wembanyama. They've got a Wemby tab. NBA draft. You can already look ahead to that. Star player props and postseason awards. That's just a sample of what's available at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Well, time for the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Take it away, Sam.
We'll start with Wolves. They did pick up a win last night, 119-114, over an undermanned Portland team, to say the least. They finished their 7-game homestand 4-3 with 3 late-game losses to the Bucks, Kings, and Clippers, the 3 legit teams they played in this homestand. And, Ron, here's the key stat. The Wolves' clutch time offensive rating is the worst in the NBA since December 20th. Are you worried about their ability to finish games in the playoffs?
No. So the one thing I am worried about, and we've talked about this, it's that third quarter. So what does their third quarter look like in their fourth quarter? When they come out strong in the third, the mental mindset of the fourth, and then vice versa. When they come out weak in the third, their mindset in the fourth. So it's more the second half to me than just like closing games out. I do understand that metric. And part of that, honestly, though, Sam, is because some of these third quarters, they're blowing teams out. And I think they just relax and they forget the other team is still trying to play and beat them. And that goes back to the what was that, the 60-point night? When they should have easily been able to close the game out, and they just had lackadaisical, dumb plays. So I think I am worried about that part of it, the lackadaisicalness of the team towards the end. When you're first for I don't think they're in first place so long, we stopped talking about it. Like at first people were like, oh, this is the longest the Wolves been in first place after the whatever. This is the longest they've been in third place after the quarter of the season. This is the longest they've been in third place after 50 games. This is the longest they've been in first place after the All-Star break. Like now it's just like they're the first place team. It's like being married, Sam. When you first get married, that feeling. You wake up, you're loving it. It's like, oh, we're married. I love you. Year 1, it's like, oh, happy anniversary. It's year 1. This is so great. Year 2, it's like, babe, we made it. 2 years. After 17 years and 2 kids, where I'm at, you just like, hey, I love you. I'll see you tonight. You go about life. And I think that's where we're at with the Wolves now. We're just going about life. Like we're just moving our daily day to day. And we're like, oh, we have the first place team. All right, let's go. But when the playoffs come, all that goes out the window. It does not matter that they're in the first place. So I hope they snap out of that. Maybe that's a smack of reality. Honestly, I wouldn't mind them entering the playoffs as the number 2 seed. And there's a reason why. Yeah. Because then it forces them to understand the severity of what happened. Like, man, we were in first place for so long and now we're the 2 seed. Thunder get the 1, they get the 2. I would not be upset about that. The only thing, and so when you look at the NBA standings, Tim, the only thing I'm worried about is who they play, because right now everybody's jockeying for position. And I'm not looking at the East. The East is already crazy. But in the West, you got Timberwolves, Thunder, Nuggets, Clippers. I think those are your top 4 regardless. Clippers are starting to fall back, but they did beat the Timberwolves. By the way, that James Harden play at the end, the and one play where he
traveled,
passed,
he took 5-step.
He took 17 steps. So they should have won that game. That should have been a travel. Ball to the Timberwolves, going back down the court. Probably don't end up getting the and one play, which is crazy that they don't notice little stuff like that. But you got the Pelicans, Suns, Kings, Mavs at the bottom. The Lakers are 9th or 9.5 games back, but they're 1 game back from the Mavs. The Warriors are 2 or 1.5 games back. So that's Warriors-Lakers seems like it's going to be your 9-10 because the Jazz being 15 games back are 5 games away from the Warriors. So right now it seems like Lakers, Mavs, Warriors, and Kings, because the Kings are only 2 games ahead of the Warriors. So those bottom 4 can flip in any direction. The one thing for the Timberwolves, I feel like at 7, like I like that matchup because you have to take it a little bit more serious, but you don't know who you're going to get. I think you're going to get the Mavs. I think the Mavs are going to win the play-ins to get that 7 seed. I think 8, honestly, in a one-game situation, I think the Lakers can beat the Kings. I do. I just think the Lakers in a one-game situation, because we saw them in the bubble, quote unquote, when their backs are against the wall, they can beat anybody. And we saw that. And so that's why I think the Lakers could be the 8th seed. Now, between you and I, let's talk this quick. Who would you rather, because we ran a little bit long on this question, but I did want to get this out the way. Yeah. Who would you want to have in the playoffs? If the Timberwolves are the first seed, let's say they are the first seed, would you rather the Lakers or the Kings?
Oh, man, that is hard. And it's if any of the combination of teams would have been hard because I think they're all pretty good. I mean, I just watched the Kings beat the Wolves, and Malik Monk, like they didn't have De'Aaron Fox. So you'd think, oh, the Kings won't have the firepower.
Right.
Malik Monk goes off for 40. Sabonis is really good. They've got some shooters. Keegan Murray. I don't know. I'm almost more comfortable with the Lakers just because they're older and you've played well against them this year. But it's LeBron. We saw what he did last year. He made the Western Finals. Man, Ron, that's hard. I'm going to go Lakers. Yeah. Give me the Lakers.
So let's think about that. Let's make that a question for Friday. Who would you rather play? Kings, Mavs, Lakers, or Warriors? We can make it all 4. That way, the 4 of us in the round table, we can talk about that. So let's put a pin in that, and we're going to talk about that Friday. So make sure you guys tune into the Friday round table because we're going to talk about it. We can do it on the basketball party too. Let's get a group of us to talk about that. Who would we rather face? Kings, Mavs, Lakers, Warriors, and let's get the fans to do it on Twitter too. We can make that the poll question maybe after the basketball party. Like send that out, and then we can re-talk about it on Friday and say, here's what the poll ended up being. The fans picked whatever. Because I think that could be a good poll question for the fans as well that week, and we can talk about that tomorrow too in the basketball parties. Let's do that. Really quick, what's the next one? We got 2 more quick ones before we get out of here.
Yeah, this has become the annual offseason tradition for Gophers football. PJ Fleck has leveraged a raise from the Gophers after he received interest from UCLA, went to the negotiating table, got some more money. Are you good with how that process has gone every offseason with Fleck getting extensions, raises, even after the season the Gophers had?
My man Jalen Rose always said this: never count another man's money. So no, I'm not hating on it. Go get your money because I know I want mine. I'm fine with it because that's the business of it. If that keeps PJ Fleck a little bit more loyal and keeps him here, then I'm fine with that too, because transition and turmoil can ruin a program. And I think the Gophers are headed in a good direction right now with recruiting and starting to get some of these top recruits to want to stay home, starting to get these other big time recruits from other states to want to come here. Something special going on in Minnesota. So yeah, I'm fine with that. And I think getting his assistants paid was the other part of that. And that's the key.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make about the assistants too. Last one, Bill Barnwell projects that KJ Osborn for the Vikings could receive between $2 and $5 million in free agency this offseason. So with that being the price, would you bring him back to Minnesota, Ron?
Honestly, that's a tough one. He is very solid as number 2, like receiver 2 when he has to be, because we know Justin Jefferson was out. We know Jordan Addison was out. KJ Osborn was always a solid 2. As a 3, that's a lot personally. Like if he's going to for sure be 3 and you think Justin Jefferson, Addison, and then KJ's 3, I would say for 3, you can go out and get you a rookie. Like I said, in Keon Coleman or some out of Florida State. There's some other rookies you can get. But I mean, let's see, because he's going to get to talk. He's going to get to talk and see what other people want to offer him. On the 2 side, I would be fine with that. On the 5 side, that's the tough one, because like, well, how many years is that? Is that 5 years for $5 million a year, $25 million on the books, and it's like a guaranteed 30 mil or something? That might be tougher because are you holding him expecting not to resign Jordan Addison? So you want to have a 2 here in the building that knows the offense? I think that's the question. But yeah, for $2.5 million, yeah, I would for sure do that. I just don't know if you want to spend $5 a year on a 3rd receiver. And I think that's the key, is where do they see him as receiver? I don't know. What are your thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I would do it. Like you said, 2's better than 5. I'd be surprised if he only made 2. I feel like he's a better player than that.
Yeah, for sure. He is.
Yeah,
that's why I say like it might be higher than 5. Like some teams really like him.
Yep. I'd give him 2 years, $8 million, get him for the next 2 years pretty affordably. I think that'd be nice.
Well, that'll do it for today on the Ron Johnson Show. Sam, I want to thank you for joining me. We're looking forward to the basketball party tomorrow because I love some basketball and we got a lot to talk about because now I'm going to do some little more research on those bottom 4 teams. So make sure you guys tune in tomorrow to the basketball party so we can see who everybody else wants to face in the playoffs. Maybe I'm a LeBron fan too much and that's why I'm scared of the Lakers. That might be part of it. LeBron is getting older. So maybe like our bigs versus AD and LeBron can just our 4 bigs versus their 2. Maybe we take over. Austin Reeves, I think now with Monte, I think he can come in and defend him well. I think Mike Conley can handle him well because he's very savvy and doesn't reach. And then Anthony Edwards. I don't think the Lakers have an answer for Anthony Edwards, and I think that's the key. It's who can they match. They don't have Kobe. If Kobe was back, I'd be worried. They don't have a Kobe that can match up, in my opinion. I don't think D'Angelo Russell can handle Anthony Edwards, even though he thinks he can. I don't think he can. But that's one of those things when that's your old teammate, you think you could take advantage of when he was a young cat. He's not a young cat anymore, D'Angelo. I don't think you can handle him. But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Maxwell. Make sure you find Locked On Sports Minnesota 24/7 on our YouTube live stream for all your favorite Minnesota sports shows around the clock. It's the basketball party. It's the football party. It's the Ron Johnson show. And, of course, we got the roundtable on Fridays. And, of course, we're going to cover Vikings, Wild, Wolves, Twins, and Gophers all hours of the day. I want to thank you guys and have a great one.